Hello, my name is Jennifer Smith. I'm the director of the Center for Teaching Excellence at the University of Florida. I'm here today with Dr. Trysh Travis, who is an associate professor in the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. We're here today to talk about difficult conversations and how to have them in your classroom. So Trysh, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm an associate professor in the Center for Gender, Sexuality, and Women's Studies Research, and I teach Women's Studies 3015, Interdisciplinary Perspectives on Women's Studies. It's the gateway class for the major, and it's also a Gen Ed Humanities class that carries diversity requirement and offers 4,000 words. It's a big class of about 70 students. Students come from all levels and from all kinds of majors. It's the gateway class for our major, but it's not just a women's studies class. It's got a variety of viewpoints and backgrounds in the classroom, and one of the things that we talk about in that class is abortion.
So why do you teach this topic that's really potentially very divisive?
Unlike men, women can incubate and bear children. This fact, plus the social expectation that they bear the responsibility for caring for children, means that reproduction is a key issue to consider when anyone is thinking about the status of women in the world, with an interest in maintaining or preserving that status. How is women's reproductive capacity honored by society? How and to what extent is women's reproductive capacity supported? Who benefits from women's reproductive capacity, and how do they benefit? And who controls that capacity? Any class that wants to understand women's place in the world needs to address those questions, and when it does, that class will talk about chastity, about marriage and sex refusal, about birth control and family planning, and it will talk about abortion. So there's not really a way not to teach it in a class like this.
And so how do you prepare students really to enter into this difficult conversation about this challenging topic?
So I want to talk about three things here. How I scaffold the topic in the classroom, the assignments that I give, and the things I say and don't say in the classroom. By the time we get to talking about abortion in my class, it's around the middle of the semester, and we've already discussed marriage refusal and birth control access, which were key issues for an early generation of feminists in the 19th century. The students have a sense already of the stakes of reproductive control for a past generation of women who were concerned about women's access to education, to the workplace, to the public sphere, and to the state's protection of their legal rights. So they have a sense of a woman's body as a thing that exists in a world that is regulated by the state and structured by economic and political power. That's the scaffolding within which we come to this potentially divisive topic. I use abortion to talk about the state's interests in women's reproductive capacity, and I see this moment in class as a really key one for pointing students towards larger, late 20th century discussions of women's identities relative to state power. This means that when we discuss abortion in class, we come at it from a fairly narrow perspective, and that is through the Supreme Court decisions that have regulated women's access to information about sexuality, to birth control, and to abortion. These are decisions that began in the 19th century, lead up to and follow from the Roe v. Wade decision in 1973. One of the things that this class does, because it's a Gen Ed humanities class, is to try and teach students to carefully and thoughtfully read difficult printed materials. Supreme Court cases, if you have not looked at one recently, fall into that category. So I let the students know that our conversation about abortion is going to be structured very closely around an examination of the language used in the cases that led up to and followed from Roe v. Wade. This is an important humanities skill, and it's also a way of containing conversations that could easily go off the rails into issues that are not relevant to the class and not productive in the class, including people's personal feelings, which are totally legitimate, but not necessarily part of what we can address in a fast-paced class that needs to cover a lot of material. So I assign the court cases. There are excellent excerpted and annotated versions of the decisions available in document readers that I excerpt and present on Canvas. I give the students reading questions to prepare for class, which is something I do with all of the readings in my intro class. And I prepare a lecture which walks them through the progression of court cases, beginning in the late 19th century with Anthony Comstock laws preventing the circulation of information, pornographic information, which included information about birth control, leading up to the decisions in the 1950s and 60s about the rights of married couples to access birth control from their care providers, to Roe v. Wade, with its holding that a woman's right to privacy is what allows her to make the decision about whether to terminate a pregnancy, and then to a series of cases that followed in the 80s and 90s, which limited but did not overturn that right. This is probably one of my most boring lectures because it focuses quite narrowly on the language from each of the decisions in this long chain, and because it emphasizes, in ways that I think are increasingly important but not necessarily well known to students, the ways in which Supreme Court decisions are made based on the history of prior Supreme Court cases and based on lower court decisions, which are not subject to the same levels of scrutiny that decisions by the highest court in the land makes. Students sometimes have knowledge of the way the federal court system works from having taken AP Government or a civics class, but they have not often been invited to think about judicial rulemaking and its effect on their own lives. This is a place where the personal and the state come together in ways that many young people have not thought about unless they've been arrested for DWI, which is the place that most of them have found an encounter with the state. I have found in my informal polling. So thinking about the fact that as educated citizens of the state of Florida and of the United States, they have an existing and malleable relationship with the largest rulemaking bodies of the nation is a pretty important eye-opening experience for them. And if all of this sounds as though I'm not talking about what abortion is really about in a room full of undergraduate men and women, I would just really beg to differ with that. The state's ability to regulate bodies, not just women's bodies, but men's bodies, is at the heart of the decision in Roe v. Wade and an ongoing subject for negotiation and regulation in the U.S. today. It has implications for thinking about the way marriages are regulated, cases of miscegenation and same-sex marriage. It has much to do with the way domestic violence has been prosecuted or not prosecuted. It has to do with the ways in which children may or may not be separated from their families. So the question of how the state can regulate the body and intervene in the private sphere is an important piece of late 20th century feminism that was not really available to earlier generations of feminists who were focused on women's ability to access the public sphere. Now, I don't ask my students whether they believe in a woman's right to abortion. I don't take a poll or use clickers or anything like that. I never disclose my own political position in this regard. Neither of those things are really relevant to what I'm trying to convey in class, which is an understanding of a series of court cases which regulate an area that most of my students have not thought about as regulatable, and to invite them to understand the mechanisms by which areas that they think may be personal and private are in fact the subject of interest by all kinds of bodies outside of their own sphere of knowledge. That's what I'm trying to teach them when I teach them about abortion and how it was important to successive generations of women, so that they can make their own decision, not just about this particular regulated instance, but about the larger relationship between people's lives and the lives of the state.
So in general, you stay fairly close to the primary resource material, which is the court cases, and the understanding and analysis of that, and how it applies to people's lives as they are today.
Yeah, that is my training as a historian and sometimes a literary scholar, is to keep a conversation focused on the text. It is the nature of a humanities course to teach and train students into that kind of inquiry as a matter of disciplinary or area-specific skill. It is sadly an area in which many of our students' high school educations did not give them a lot of training, so it's always good to refresh that. And it is a way of keeping the students grounded in the topic as it functions in our class, rather than spinning off into ancillary areas about which there may be deep feelings, profound personal experiences, and lots of energy that may or may not be relevant to the topic as we discuss it in the classroom for the purposes of instruction.
Mm-hmm. So after you've gone through this process with your students, how do you assess their performance?
You know, I don't have follow-up assignments on this specific topic. On a take-home exam, or if I give a prompt for a final paper, there might be a prompt or an exam question about access to reproductive capacity and control thereof. There might be a question about the ways in which the state intervenes or fails to intervene in personal life, but I do not give a specific paper on or exam question that requires people to talk about the Supreme Court cases that we studied in class. And I would say also that is a practice of mine that covers all of the areas in the class. I try to write exams and paper prompts which allow students to follow up on the things that they found most interesting in the class, not the things that I feel like if you do not show mastery of or expertise on this particular topic in the exact way we discussed it in class, your education has been insufficient. That seems like a kind of narrow form of assessment that I don't really see a lot of value in.
So what do you do if students happen to disagree with you or maybe even get upset?
I am happy to say that that has never happened in this class with this topic. On the contrary, I would say that I have had students thank me for a dispassionate presentation of the historical and legal and political facts of the matter. Those students have been women who have come up in Christian households that believe life begins at conception. They have been more radical women and men who believe that the second wave feminist focus on abortion took energy and attention away from broader concerns about women's health, particularly the health of marginalized women, and who prefer a reproductive justice lens on the question of women's reproductive capacity and childbearing. And they have been men who have said they were always curious about this, but were afraid to raise the question with people in their family or that women they knew for fear of seeming insensitive. So if there are people who have been unhappy because they didn't get to voice their personal opinion about this topic, no one has ever registered that with me. And in this topic area, as in all the things I talk about in my class, I invite students who are concerned or frustrated or just want to know more or just want to share their thoughts on, to come to me or to my TA in office hours for more informal conversation in which we have more of an opportunity for discussion of the personal dimensions of topics that came up in class. I wish more of them would come.
Yep, always. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Travis. This has really been very insightful and useful to hear about your approach to teaching a challenging topic. And this kind of thing can be applied in other topics as well. So we thank you very much, and thank you for joining us.